So, commodity bull market. That is what we're going to be looking at today as I talk you through how I plan to ride what I see as a once in a lifetime opportunity in the commodity market and plan to make life-changing gains over the next 2 to 3 years. So if that is interesting to you, do stay tuned for the rest of the next 20 to 30 minutes. Do please hit the subscribe button and like if you haven't done so already. Really grateful. I know last week I picked up a couple hundred new subscribers on YouTube. Great to have you with me. Hope you enjoy some of the content. If you haven't done so already, please head over to X and follow me through at Part-Time Charts. Before we crack into it, just a brief reminder that nothing you hear on this YouTube channel and nothing that you might see over on X constitutes financial advice. I'm definitely not a financial or investment professional, so I would recommend that you do your own research and that you find someone who really knows what they're talking about. But having said all of that, I have spent the best part of 8 years obsessing over charts, teaching myself, as much as I can about macro, about fundamental analysis, and most importantly, technical analysis. So I'm going to be using the latter today to paint a bit of a picture of where I think we are with commodities and hopefully give you some interesting information that might help some of your thinking as you develop your approach to market. So let's dig straight into it. Here is the silver chart, and this is a really exciting chart for me, guys. I look at this and historically what seems to happen, I almost think of, I know lots of you who follow me are really into the crypto market. I almost think of precious metals and particularly sort of miners and oil producers a bit like altcoins in that they underperform the market for a long time. They look like they're not doing very much, and then you get these explosive gains. And you can see that the last period of really, truly explosive gains that we had in the silver market was back in the 70s. And why I think that's really interesting is that if you go back and watch some of my prior videos, you'll know that my main thesis for the market is that the bond market is calling time on ridiculous levels of unsustainable government borrowing, and that bonds are heading to hell. I really believe that the bond market is going to crash in a really significant way. It's already down massively over the last few years, but I see no let up for bond investors. I think yields are going higher. Inflation is here to stay, at least for the sort of medium term. And as a result, we're going to see a revaluation of precious metals and other commodities like oil. And I believe that presents us with a massive opportunity, not just to shield ourselves from some of the financial turmoil that is about to come. And we saw, in my mind, a bit of a preview of that in 2022 when the market corrected as inflation ticked up and rates obviously rose from very low levels to where we are today. I believe that was just a small preview of what is about to come when the shit really hits the fan, and I think we are not far away from that. But if you want more detail on that, you can go back to some of my prior videos and I lay out my sort of macro thesis on the market in a bit more detail. But I suppose the bit that I really wanted to dig into today is how I see the commodities market. And this is the silver chart. Silver's had a really strong couple of months recently, bouncing back from these lows that we put in. We're kind of up about 20-30% over the last 2 to 3 months. But I think that pales in comparison to what is about to happen. If you go back to the early 1970s, which is the last time we had a real period of stagflation with a weak economy and rates heading much higher, inflation, obviously a major problem that central banks were having to grapple with. I think that is analogous to the period that we're in now. And if you look at what happened during that time, you see this huge rise from about $1, the price of silver, up into the $38 region by the end of that decade. So the entire 1970s was just a period of massive outperformance in the precious metals market versus pretty much everything out there. And what's happened since is that over the last 40 years, we've seen this big period of consolidation in silver, which is largely, obviously we've had some big volatility during that time, that we've seen a huge move to the downside back into the sort of $4 region, so an almost 90% decline in the price of silver, and a move back up to the highs. But that took 30 years to play out. And then since then, over the last 15 years, we've not really done very much. We've seen a big decline. We're back up to the highs. But largely, we haven't taken out the high that we put in 45 years ago. So the market has not been particularly exciting for investors, especially when, the world of tech and the NASDAQ over the last couple of decades has obviously been a really strong performer in return terms. So I look at consolidation like this and I think, wow, what's possible with this market in the coming years? And if I'm right, and rates are higher, rates being higher is something that we're going to have to get used to, and inflation is going to start ticking up again, then boy, oh boy, I really believe that we're in for a move. From a technical perspective, measuring the bottom of this cup and handle pattern to the top, the previous high that we put in back in the late 70s, all the way through, to if we break that level over the coming months, where might that take us? And I think that takes us about 10x, 1,000% return on the price of silver from where we are now. So like I say, this is not just an opportunity to deliver life-changing gains, and I believe the market will, but it is also an opportunity to shield myself from a lot of the instability and the volatility that I think we're likely to experience in markets like equities and crypto over the next couple of years. So big opportunity in the commodities market, and silver is one of my favorites. And you can see a similar sort of pattern. It's a slanted, but perhaps not quite such an orthodox cup and handle, but we've got a very similar pattern in that, in the gold market, we saw a big rise in the 1970s, followed by a big decline, a long period of consolidation, and gold has made new highs over the last 40 years. But what we've seen since the start of 2025 is that this trend line that has capped price for 45 years now has broken and has given way. And I believe we are in I still think, I know price is up 100% over the last couple of years, the price of gold, but I still think we're in the early stages of a big gold bull market. And I think silver is likely to outperform shortly. But for me, the fact that gold has already broken out tells me that it's not going to be long before we see the same in silver, and that the magnitude of the move in silver is likely to be greater than what we'll experience in gold. But I'm still expecting gold to go to at least $10,000 per ounce, which is a massive move. It's 3x from here. And obviously on silver, as I've already said, I'm expecting something more like a 10x in the coming years. Now, how long might that take to play out? Who knows? I mean, I expect big moves over the next 2 to 3 years, but the entirety of this move up could take the best part of a decade. But during that time, I do expect precious metals to outperform the stock market by a considerable margin. So how am I playing this? Well, look, obviously one play is that you just buy the metals themselves, and you can do that through the futures market. You could do that by buying, physical gold and silver. But what I'm really interested in is looking at the companies that produce these precious metals and seeing whether now might be an interesting time to invest in some of those. And you can see, so this is CMCL, this is Caledonia Mining Corporation, which is listed both in the US and here in the UK. And look, price action on this for a long time, since the mid-90s, has been pretty dreadful. I mean, we saw this huge decline, having taken out the high of the 1980s in the mid-90s. Price fell precipitously over the next few years, and by the year 2000, we were languishing at about $1.50 relative to the all-time high of $300. So this market has not been fun. If you have been invested over the last few decades, this has not been a fun asset to hold. But what I find really interesting is that now we're starting to see some really strong signs of technical strength. The first being that we're consistently on a higher time frame, dating all the way back to the year 2000. We're starting to put in lower highs, and we've done that consistently for 25 years now. The second thing that is really exciting me about Caledonia is that there are a couple of really clearly defined levels on this chart, and it looks to me like we've broken one and flipped it to support. So this level here, which has been a key support and resistance zone all the way back to the early 90s, has finally been flipped into really solid support. And over the last 2 to 3 years, that has held consistently. And those of you who followed me for a while on X will know that earlier in the year, and certainly for part of 2024, I've been shouting from the rooftops that buying down here is a great buy opportunity. And I've been loading up, including through my personal pension. That's how much conviction I've got in some of these trades on CMCL down here. And we're currently, some of my buys were in the sort of like the $9 region, and we're currently sitting at over $18. So up 100% on some of those buys during that period of time. And you might be thinking, well, look, from way back here, a single dollar to up here at $18, the market has already moved considerably over a high enough time frame. But it is my contention, and what I've been arguing for a while on X, that this is just the beginning of the move, because there are a couple of technical reasons that lead me to believe that CMCL is going to be a big winner over the coming months and years. And the first of those is holding this support and resistance zone. The second is that this second support and resistance zone, so this level here in the sort of $18 region, has held as resistance for a long time. So back in 03, 04, and then consistently for the last 5 years, price has been rejected off of this level, and it looks like we are now about to flip that into some sort of support. At the same time, you'll see this dotted line here. This big downtrend has been the thing that I've been looking for a break on, as a signal, as a strong signal that the market is about to head higher, and we've had that. So if we flip into the monthly time frame, you can see clearly that this downtrend has now been broken, and price is starting to hold much more strongly in this $18 region. So I believe that if we see continued strength in the gold market, in the silver market, that some of these miners are going to do really well. And once we get up above this level and we do start to confirm the $18, $19 region as support, I just don't think there's much to stand in the way of CMCL heading back to the highs that were experienced in the late 80s and the mid 90s. Just look at this inefficiency here. There was literally nothing, no support all the way down for this big move back in the late 90s. And I think all of this space here, I believe, is just going to get eaten up. Price is going to push through without much resistance at all. And my target, as you can see here, is coming back into these highs, this sort of region in the, let's call it $350 region, which from where we are today, if I just adjust this a little bit, is a 1800% move. So, to me, these are genuinely life-changing gains. If you're in some of these investments in size and this kind of move plays out, then you're talking about the kind of gains that up until now people have gotten used to only playing out, particularly in a relatively short space of time in the crypto market. So when I say, the crypto market is not the only market that exists, this is what I'm talking about. I keep saying for months now, Bitcoin and crypto has largely gone sideways. Let's be honest, there's volatility in the market, of course there is, but the highs that we put in late 2024 have not really been breached in a significant way, in a meaningful way. And so largely what we've had for 6 months or so is a sideways market in crypto. Meanwhile, we're finally starting to get some big upside on some of these commodity plays that I've been screaming about on X for some time. And if you were buying down here at the lows when I was flagging this as a potentially really good investment on X, all of a sudden you're up 100% in the space of 6 months. So lots more upside to come, I believe, on something like CMCL, and a really clean chart from a technical perspective. There are some others that I'm looking at. So First Majestic Silver Corp AG is another one that I've liked the look of, and principally because, again, high time frame chart. This dates back to 0708, the global financial crisis, but you can see just a really clean SR zone here on the 3-month chart. And since sort of mid 2023, we've started to flip this into support. Well, actually, I should say we started to flip this into support in 27.18, and we saw a big move up to the range highs here, and we've come back down to the bottom of what to me looks like a big range, between this level here and this level here. And this range, I believe, will give way at some point. What I've been talking about on X for quite some time is that if we see another big reaction off of these lows here, that we're likely to revisit the range high, which in itself, from bottom to top is a really significant move, something like 600%. And even from where we are now, you're talking about a 300% move to get you back up into the $25 region. I should say a 3x move, a 200% move. But if that happens, it's my argument that this is not going to hold, that the top of the range is going to give way, and we're going to see a measured move that is probably similar in distance and returns from the move from the range low to the range high. And that should take us into the $140 region at some point. Now, obviously, it makes sense that if the price of silver is on the brink of a historic breakout, then some of these mining companies that have just underperformed the market for such a long time might finally be on the brink of a breakout themselves. And just like, again, going over the technicals, this range low, this key support and resistance zone is the first sign, but on the lower time frames, or at least slightly lower than the 3-month chart where we've got quarterly candles, you can see that this big trend line here broke down a couple of years ago, but price hasn't broken down. So the range low is held. And if you've looked at enough charts over time, you realize that if a breakdown is going to happen, price has to tank relatively shortly after. If price starts hanging around and retesting the boundary of this sort of giant symmetrical triangle pattern, to me, that's a sign that at some point we're going to break back through this trend line that was given up a few years ago. And when that happens, I expect to see some really explosive moves to the upside. So I do not think this is going to hang around. We've already broken this downtrend that has existed since late 2022. So this has capped price for the last 2 to 3 years. And earlier this week, in fact, we started to see the big move out from under this trend line. So first sign of strength was holding these lows. Second sign of strength was breaking this downtrend that dates back to late 2022. The bigger sign of strength that I'm waiting for is to push back through the lower boundary of this symmetrical triangle pattern. And when that happens, I think it's going to be a really rapid move up into the $25 region. And eventually that should get flipped and we'll see much higher. So again, just a really nice example of really clean price action. If you believe in the strength of the gold and the silver bull market, then these are the sorts of plays that you should be looking at. And then let's take a look at other markets. So this is platinum, and recently over the last month or so, we've seen a big break in the downtrend on platinum. This again was something that I've been talking about probably for the best part of 6 months. And if you've been loading up on platinum based assets here, I think you're going to be really happy in the months to come. As you can see from the chart, the first sign of strength was that this support zone has held for a really long time and has been reclaimed after the COVID-driven breakdown back in 2020. And then the big sign of strength that I was looking for was that this downtrend would give way. And at the moment, I can see very little resistance until at least the $1,300 region. I expect us at some point over the next couple of years to go back to the all-time highs, which is a 2x move from where we are now, 100% gains. But I believe the market could push much, much higher. And one of the reasons that I believe platinum could be a really big winner is this chart. So this is the price of platinum relative to the price of gold. And what's really interesting about this is if you believe that gold is going to deliver really significant returns, then you've got to start looking for something that might actually outperform gold. So if gold is going to outperform the US dollar and, in my view, the equity market for some time, then anything that is going to outperform gold is going to be a really big winner. And this platinum to gold chart, I think, is an absolute dream. I have been looking at this falling channel for probably the last 6 to 9 months, and I've posted lots about this on X. When we got this breakdown back in April, sort of March, April, I did question myself. I'm not going to lie. When you see some price action as clean as this, and I was anticipating, as you can see from my blue squiggle, I was anticipating that this would be the bottom here and that we would start to move up. But what happened instead was that the price of gold appreciated significantly, and platinum didn't follow. And so you saw this collapse in the price of platinum relative to gold. We saw a pretty big move down of sort of 20-25% over the space of a couple of months. But what has happened since is that we found support here, connecting these two lows. And yes, I know this is imperfect, but there's absolute buying pressure coming in here in the same way that we saw after this big collapse during the COVID crisis. And now what's happened is we've reclaimed this wedge. And people who have followed me for a while know how much I love a reclaim. If you see a pattern that breaks down or breaks out and then price quite quickly gets back inside that pattern, it's normally the first sign of a really strong reversal in my experience. So breaking down here and then reclaiming the wedge, to me, tells me that we're likely to see really rapid expansion in the other direction. And I believe soon we're going to be testing the upper boundary of what looks like sort of like a big, either a big downward channel, or to some extent it looks like a big descending broadening wedge. But I truly believe that we're going to test the upper boundary of that at some point, and that price is going to head much higher after we break out from this formation and break this big downtrend that dates all the way back to 2010. So platinum to me looks like a big winner, not just against US dollar, but also against gold. And that indicates, in my mind, this price is going much, much higher. I mean, it really would not surprise me to see the price of platinum do a move similar to what I'm expecting to see in silver, somewhere in the region of 10x over the coming years. And then, so how am I playing this? So again, you could look to trade platinum on the futures market, but what I'm really interested in are where are there some beaten up, battered, bruised platinum miners that have underperformed the market for some time that look like a really valuable sort of investment value play, I suppose, at the moment. And one of those that I've been talking about for some time over on X is Platinum Group Metals. This is listed in Canada and the US, and you can see there are some reasons, some really good strong technical reasons why I'm bullish on this. The first is that we've had this almost like a bump and run pattern. So people who have followed me for a while know that I love a bump and run pattern, and that is where you see this downtrend hold and pin price back, but that the move, you start off with a small dip and then you get a really big bump. So this is called the lead-in phase. You get a huge bump to the downside, and then you get some consolidation before it breaks. And what's happened is that not only have we seen a break in this major downtrend that dates back just over 10 years, we've seen the break, we've seen the retest, we've come back in to some of these lows down here over the last couple of months, and price is starting to show some really strong support in this region. And this to me is looking something like an inverse head and shoulders. So to top it all off, we've got bump and run pattern, downtrend has been back tested as support, we've retested some of these lows down here back in April, and the buyers have stepped in, and this is starting to look like an inverse head and shoulders. And it's my belief that this is going to absolutely fly. And normally with a bump and run pattern, your target is to look for the origin of the move, and the origin of this move is way back up here. There's a really key support and resistance zone. As you can see, this held a support for over 10 years before giving way and ultimately preceding the really significant declines that we've seen in the sort of 2014 to 2018 phase of this market. So I think if this breaks to the upside and we get this neckline gives way and price starts to break above, I don't think there's a huge amount of significant resistance until back here in the $80 region. Now, how long is it going to take for that to play out? Your guess is as good as mine. I think we'll see some really serious price action over the next couple of years. And so I expect us to do the bulk of the move in maybe the next 2 to 3. But to get back up into the $75, $80 region, we could be talking about 5 to 10 years. But these gains are massive. And, this alone, you're talking about something that looks like a 35x move. If you can deliver that kind of gain while equities might be struggling during that time, that is an incredible gain to be delivering for yourself. So my advice on some of these, not my advice, I do not give financial advice, but the way I'm thinking about this market is that patience is key. These trends, look, this chart is a 25-year chart, 23-year chart. Some of these trends are massive. I mean, this downtrend dates all the way back to over a decade ago. Do not get too drawn in to the daily kind of fluctuations in price, what the weekly chart says. I'd be looking at the monthly and the quarterly chart for guidance on where this is heading, and I believe it's going much higher. And as per some of the other plays, this is something that I'm trying to invest in heavily, because I think it's not only a great way to shield myself from some of the trouble that I see in the equity market unfolding, but also a way to deliver outsized gains that I can then invest back into the equity market as the crisis ends and prices stabilize in 2027. And PTM is not the only play. So, I mean, PTM has already delivered, gains of about 50-60% over the last month or so. But there are others. I've been screaming about SBSW, Sibanye Stillwater, from back here in the $3.5 region. We're now up at about $7. So we've already delivered a 2x since the start of the year. And I believe this is going much higher. My first target is the $20 region. If you were lucky enough to get in here, you're talking about 15x on that investment. Price may not be capped here. I will be taking profits here, but we could see much higher. But I think there are loads of plays out there that look like this at the moment. The mining sector has not been a great place to be for a long time. And if we are starting to see breakouts in silver and in gold, then it stands to reason that some of these plays are going to do really well. So look, bullish on silver, bullish on gold, even more bullish on platinum, which looks set to outperform gold significantly by some margin, and really looking at some of the high quality mining plays that you can get in that space that from a technical perspective just look really strong. This downtrend that has been in place since 2021 has broken conclusively to the upside, and I think it's only a matter of time before we revisit some of these highs in the $20 region. What else am I bullish on? So obviously gold, silver, platinum are fantastic. One area that I'm watching with real keenness is the oil market. Posted this chart earlier in the week. I just think these levels are so clean. We've seen resistance, support all the way through. For the last 6 years, this level has been a key one, and everybody was watching it a couple of months ago. This downtrend has held and capped price since May 2022, June 2022, and everybody was watching this breakdown, and everybody flipped bearish the moment price broke down. And I've been the only one calling for people to chill out and wait and see how price unfolds. Now, obviously, you do not want to be longing a breakdown like this, but if we see a reclaim, and I think there are reasons to believe that we're on the brink of one, then longing oil in this area is something that I'm really keen to do. And I'll talk you through a couple of oil plays in a minute in the equity market. But look, I said earlier, when you get a breakdown and you get a reclaim, often that leads to rapid price expansion in the other direction. So I'm looking at all of these lows. They've all been taken out. Now, if price was going to collapse from here, you would have expected it to happen by now. So there's been plenty of opportunity in the last couple of months for price to roll over and for us to revisit these lows and potentially make lower highs before price eventually collapses and takes out some of this inefficiency here. But that hasn't happened. The fact that we've been hanging around, that we've been testing this region over and over again, the fact that price action over the last week or so has been so strong, I really believe that we're going to reclaim here. But we don't need to believe, we just wait for price action to unfold. And if that does happen, this green arrow here is the trigger, I think, to break this downtrend and to revisit the highs that we put in back in 2021 up in this $120 region. So this is a big play for me. And I tell you, there's another hint that the silver market is going to be strong. And this is, the oil market is going to be strong. This is the price of oil relative to the S&P 500. And I've been saying for months now that this looks like a big falling wedge wrapped up inside of my favorite pattern, which is a big descending broadening wedge. So you've got a bullish pattern inside a bullish pattern. I think that, you know, the downtrend in the price of oil relative to equities, relative to the S&P 500, dates all the way back to the financial crisis in 2008. But I believe we are in the final throes of that downtrend, and that soon we're going to see a big move to the upside for oil. And the oil is going to begin to outperform the equities market in a way that I think is going to be similar to, surprise, surprise, what we saw back in the early 70s. So again, the last time that we saw a significant period of stagflation in the economy was the 1970s. This is when silver and gold outperformed the market, and oil unsurprisingly did so too. You can see here, you know, this period of overperformance of oil versus the S&P was massive, and as this big downtrend came to an end and we broke out, we saw some consolidation at these lows here, but eventually the price of oil made some really, really big gains during that period. And so lots of people wonder, well, why has oil not shown any strength recently, particularly with silver being strong, with gold being strong, gold in particular having a big breakout. And I'm not going to lie, I've also been surprised that the oil market has taken some time to show any strength, but I believe that we are there. I believe that this wedge is going to break to the upside soon, and we're going to retest the upper boundary of this descending broadening wedge before it breaks to the upside. And I expect that over the next 10 years, oil bulls are going to be very, very happy with their returns, and the oil is one way to outperform equities for many years to come. And just to give you a little bit of increased confidence in that view, you know, this is the gold chart again. Now look at the correlation between gold and oil. You know, big move up in the 70s, both assets appreciated significantly. Then we saw big decline, long period of consolidation, a run up in the noughties. Again, you know, oil and gold pretty much in tandem for a decade, and then we've seen a period of consolidation where both assets have not been particularly exciting. Gold has probably been more stable than oil during that time, but largely on a high enough time frame, there is absolutely a really strong correlation between a lot of these commodities. And if silver and gold are looking strong, then I find it hard to believe that oil is going to crash during the same time. So this big breakout on gold gives me increased confidence that while oil is trailing behind and has been a bit slow, that it's going to pick up the pace in the months to come. And this big divergence that we've seen in the correlation, where oil for the last 3 years has been on the decline and has been making lower highs and lower lows. At the same time, gold has been pressing to the upside and has delivered 100% move during that period. I believe this divergence is about to come to an end, and that we'll see oil as a really interesting catch-up play to gold, and potentially for oil to outperform lots of assets, definitely the stock market in my view, but potentially even gold over the next few years. So that's my view on oil. And just to wrap up, just a couple of plays in the oil space. Obviously, I'm based in the UK, so I spend a lot of my time looking at UK listed equities, particularly in the oil and gas market. And here's one that I absolutely love. Tullow Oil, an Irish oil company, which has been absolutely battered since 2012. So the price peaked at $1,400 per share, and during the COVID crisis fell as low as $7 per share. We've seen, a period of consolidation, but what I love about this, my favorite pattern, as many of you will know, is a descending broadening wedge. And I think we've had that with a big sort of false breakdown here during the COVID crisis. So price has held, this trend line has held as support, 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 big breakdown, reclaim, support. And I'm expecting us to retest the upper boundary of this wedge at some point this year. And inside the macro descending broadening wedge is another descending broadening wedge. So for me, given how much I love this pattern, and the reason I love this pattern is because, having spent years of watching charts, there are some patterns that just do not play out the way that people expect them to. Things like symmetrical triangles. I just think these patterns are so simple. Everybody spots them. But there are others that seem to have a really, really good track record when I backtest some of these ideas. And descending broadening wedges is one of those. It's my favorite pattern. And the fact that we've got a 4-year descending broadening wedge inside of a 15-year descending broadening wedge, I think that gives me reason to believe that if the oil market is bullish, and if oil presses on in the way that I expect it to, and I've just outlined that potential overperformance relative to the equity market, then I think some of these oil producers that have really struggled over the last couple of decades are about to come into their own. And so the first move that I'm looking for is a move back into this zone here, which would be about a 14-15x move. But it's possible, given how long this period of consolidation is taken to play out, it's possible that at some point in the coming years we revisit these highs. But my target is up here, a 15x move, and I was buying down at the lower boundary of this wedge. And I'll wrap up with just one more example. I'm not going to dwell on this for too long, but this is Mosman Oil and Gas. This is a really low cap company. I think the market cap is something like 10-11 million pounds. Again, trend line, resistance, dating all the way back to 10 years ago, has broken. We've back tested it. We flipped this key SR zone into support again. Now price moved up in a big way from these lows, and I was really happy with the 300% move that I'd experienced up into this region, or 200% move, 3x. We have seen a bit of a pullback, but I'm seeing that as an opportunity to load up. And the reason for the pullback, if you're interested, is that the company did a raise, and some of these really low cap companies, when they raise capital, they struggle to raise it at valuations that do not offer a significant discount to investors. And so when they did the raise, when they issued, I can't remember if it was equity or debt, but when they issued equity or debt in exchange for investor cash, they did so, I think it was equity actually, they did so at a much lower valuation than the one that price was trading at the time. And so obviously the market had to match that valuation, and price pulled back, and we've seen a decline of about 40% over the last few weeks. But that is not spooking me. I've been holding for a while, and I expect a period of consolidation before we see a big move up into the next support and resistance zone, which I think clearly is in this 23, 24 level. So, really exciting time in the market for me. I suppose I'd wrap up by saying, if you are someone who's been obsessed with crypto for a long time, like I have, and I've been in and out of the crypto market since 2017, during that time, I've spent endless hours obsessing over the charts and thinking about where the price of crypto is going. But it's important to remind yourself that it's not the only market, and the price of Bitcoin really hasn't delivered massively outsized gains relative to the stock market. You can see, equities like Meta or Netflix have delivered 600% gains over the last few years, and that's precisely what Bitcoin has done during the same period. I believe that equities and Bitcoin are going to struggle for the next couple of years as markets go through a really historic decline. And if you can find other opportunities to make money during that time, then wow, what an opportunity that is to build your capital base and think about buying the lows of a crisis in tech and in the broader equity market and in crypto. To me, that feels like a massive opportunity and a really sensible way to play the market. You've got to find your own way. But for me, I am looking at commodities in particular, and I'm seeing huge reasons to believe that we can make some massive gains over the coming years. So I hope some of that has been useful. If you have found it interesting, informative, entertaining in any way, then please do hit the subscribe button. Would love to have your support in growing the channel, and I hope I can bring you some more of this technical analysis for many months to come. Have a great weekend, guys.